Cold water splashed against tiny pink toes. The sound of violent shivering pierced the autumn air as Seattle's rain pounded mercilessly on the roof above. Michael Reynolds stood frozen at the garden entrance, his briefcase slipping from numb fingers and landing with a dull thud on the wet stone path. What in God's name is happening here? Before him, in the fading twilight of the backyard, his wife Rebecca knelt beside an old metal basin filled with water. The evening chill carried wisps of steam from the surface, but not enough to disguise the horrifying truth. Inside the basin sat his twin daughters, Emily and Grace, their small bodies trembling violently, lips turned an unnatural shade of blue. How cold does water have to be before a child stops breathing? The thought flashed through Michael's mind like lightning, paralyzing him for one terrible moment before he lunged forward. Rebecca jumped at his voice, her hand pausing mid-motion as she poured another pitcher of water over Grace's shoulders. Her face, obscured by rising steam, registered surprise before quickly composing into a practiced smile. "Michael, I didn't expect you home so early." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the basin, his hands instantly stinging from the frigid temperature. Michael lifted Grace out first, her tiny body weighing almost nothing as she shivered against him. Then Emily, whose small fingers clutched at his shirt with desperate strength. Their skin felt like ice against his hands. "The indoor water was shut off," Rebecca explained, her voice eerily calm. "I didn't want them getting any dirtier. I was just heating water to—" "This water isn't warm," Michael growled, wrapping both children in his coat. "It's barely 50 degrees outside and you have them in cold water? Are you trying to make them sick?" Emily whimpered against his chest, her small body still trembling violently. Grace remained silent, but her wide eyes locked onto her father's face with an intensity that broke his heart. A thin trail of water ran down her cheek, indistinguishable from tears. Michael carried both girls inside, his heart pounding with a fear he hadn't felt since the night Jessica died 3 years ago. The memory of his late wife surged back with painful clarity, her sudden collapse, the frantic ride to the hospital, the doctor's solemn face as he explained the heart attack had been too severe, and the promise Michael had made to Jessica as she lay in the hospital bed, her hand growing colder in his. "I'll protect our girls, I swear it." What kind of protection had he provided by bringing Rebecca into their lives? "Daddy's here now," he whispered, his voice breaking slightly as he carried the twins upstairs. "Everything's going to be okay." Behind him, Rebecca stood in the doorway, her silhouette sharp against the fading daylight. Water dripped from her fingertips, creating small, perfect circles on the hardwood floor. The Seattle morning arrived draped in mist, damp, cold air seeping through window panes and condensing into tiny droplets. Michael sat on the edge of his daughter's bed, watching their peaceful sleep after a night of fever and chills. Emily's hand clutched the edge of the blanket with surprising strength for someone so small. Grace, always the more vulnerable of the two, had curled against her sister, her breathing now steady and regular. Michael let out a heavy breath. 3 years since Jessica died. 3 years of attempting to be both father and mother to twin girls who remembered very little of the woman who had given them life. His architectural firm had flourished in that time. Reynolds Enterprises now responsible for half the modern skyline of downtown Seattle. But his home had felt hollow until Rebecca appeared. Rebecca Montgomery had seemed like the answer to his prayers. 32 years old, sophisticated and charming, she had walked into the charity gala 8 months ago and immediately captivated him with her intelligence and apparent warmth. When she spoke about her passion for children's welfare, Michael had felt the first genuine connection since losing Jessica. Now, watching his daughters recover from what could have been pneumonia or worse, doubt crawled through his mind like poison. "Stop it," he whispered to himself. She made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. The sound of a spoon clinking against a pot echoed from the kitchen below, blending with the faint smell of coffee and cinnamon. Michael adjusted the blanket for the twins and stepped out of the room, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. In the kitchen, Rebecca stood with her back to him, her hair neatly tied in a ponytail, wearing a crisp white blouse that seemed impossibly immaculate for the early hour. Her movements were measured and precise as she wiped the already spotless counter. The kitchen gleamed with unnatural tidiness, as if a home with small children shouldn't contain even a hint of disorder. She turned, offering him a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're up early. I couldn't sleep either." Michael walked closer, noticing the steaming coffee cup and perfectly arranged breakfast plate waiting for him. The normality of it felt surreal after yesterday's events. "Rebecca," he began, taking a deep breath. "About yesterday, I overreacted. I apologize." Rebecca remained silent for several seconds, as if weighing his words, then placed the coffee cup in front of him. "I understand," she said, her voice light as a whisper. "Any mother would be afraid of losing her children, even if they aren't biological." Michael froze, the sentence piercing through his defenses. Something in the phrasing sent an inexplicable chill down his spine. He looked at her, unsure what to say next. In that moment, Rebecca appeared perfectly composed, utterly understanding. A part of him relented, wondering if perhaps he had judged her too harshly. Martha Sullivan walked past in the hallway, the elderly housekeeper's footsteps slowing as she observed the scene from afar. Rebecca's eyes briefly flicked over, paused for a fraction of a second, then returned to Michael with a smile no longer carrying hurt, but something closer to self-assurance. Martha frowned, a subtle disquiet settling in her expression. Throughout the day, the atmosphere in the 8,500-square-foot Lake Washington mansion shifted. Rebecca was gentle, meticulous, and unbelievably attentive. She sang to the twins strange, soft lullabies and read them stories in a voice sweet as honey. Emily and Grace seemed to smile more often, their eyes showing less fear than the previous evening. Michael passed his home office, pausing at the doorframe to watch Rebecca sitting between his daughters, reading a picture book with animated gestures. His heart softened at the sight. Perhaps he had been wrong after all. He stepped in, placing a hand lightly on Rebecca's shoulder. "You're working so hard with them. Thank you." She looked up, her smile gentle but not entirely joyful. "This is what I should do. I just want us to truly become a family." That afternoon, she prepared an elaborate dinner: filet mignon, roasted potatoes, pumpkin soup, all his favorites. Martha brought out the serving dishes with practiced efficiency, her movements precise after 15 years in the household. "You can take the evening off, Martha," Rebecca said quietly as the older woman finished setting the table. "I'll handle the cleanup." Her voice was soft, but her gaze made it impossible for Martha to refuse. After dinner, Michael sat reading financial reports in the living room when Rebecca brought him a thick stack of papers, carefully placing them before him. "I have a few ideas. Could you take a look?" Michael picked them up, his eyes quickly scanning the neat handwriting: childcare schedules, nutrition plans, charity fundraising projects for families who had lost mothers. He looked up, viewing Rebecca differently. "You think about everything so thoroughly." Rebecca sat beside him, a fleeting smile appearing. "I just want us to be a perfect family, Michael. A place where Emily and Grace can grow up happy, lacking nothing." He nodded, his voice softening. "I'm grateful you always think of the children. Maybe I should trust you more." "I don't need your trust," she replied softly, something unreadable flashing in her eyes. "I just need you to see." Martha walked past, catching the tail end of the conversation. She paused, glancing toward the coffee table where the stack of papers lay open. At the corner of one page, partially concealed beneath others, she noticed a heading: Staff Reduction Proposal, Housekeeper, Gardener, Security. She slowly backed away, her heart heavy with concern for the family she'd served since before the twins were born. Something wasn't right with Rebecca Hayes Reynolds. Martha had sensed it from the first day, but Michael, in his loneliness, had been blind to the warning signs. Night fell, and the Reynolds mansion sank into silence. The twins slept soundly in their room, the warm glow of their nightlight casting gentle shadows on the ceiling. Michael dozed in his study, reports scattered across his desk. Across the hallway, Rebecca sat in front of her laptop, the screen's blue light reflecting off her cheekbones as she typed the final lines of an email. Phase 1 complete. He believes it. The cursor blinked on the screen for several seconds before she pressed send. A faint whoosh sound echoed in the quiet room as the message disappeared into the digital ether. Rebecca closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. Outside the window, wind rustled through the rose bushes. Beneath the damp soil in the corner of the garden, the metal basin lay buried, silent and cold, the first marker of a terrible deception yet to fully unfold. Upstairs, the faint cry of a child pierced the silence. Rebecca opened her eyes, listened for a moment, then stood up, her movements fluid and purposeful as she ascended the stairs. A rare moment of early summer sunshine spread over the mansion the following morning. The doorbell chimed across the sun-drenched courtyard, echoing in the still air. The heavy oak doors swung open to reveal Sarah Miller standing on the threshold. Sarah Miller was 25, though the shadows under her eyes and the serious set of her mouth made her appear older. Her beige coat showed small signs of wear, her honey brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. But her eyes were bright and determined, revealing an intelligence that matched her compassionate demeanor. In her hand, she clutched an old canvas bag with worn leather straps containing her nursing credentials and personal items. Michael came down the stairs, surprise registering on his face at finding a stranger in his home. "Excuse me, you are—" Rebecca appeared right behind him, her movements slow, her smile soft as mist. "Ah, Sarah Miller. She's taking over for Martha. I asked her to come this morning." Michael frowned slightly, confusion evident in his voice. "I thought Martha was staying until the end of the week at least." Rebecca took his hand, her voice low and gentle. "She wanted to leave early. She's been watching the twins for so long. I think she was tired. Sarah used to work at a pediatric center and has auxiliary nursing certification. I think she's a perfect fit." Sarah bowed her head slightly, hands clasped together. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Reynolds," she said, her voice soft but clear, revealing a slight nervousness. Michael nodded, polite but wary. From the top of the stairs, Martha appeared, pulling a small suitcase. Her eyes met Sarah's, pausing for a long moment. Something unspoken passed between them. A warning, perhaps, or a plea. When Martha drew closer, she quietly said, just loud enough for Sarah to hear, "Be careful of her." Then she turned and left without looking back, closing a chapter of 15 years' service to the Reynolds family. Rebecca watched Martha go, a slight smirk playing at the corner of her lips. "She's old-fashioned, not used to new ways. Don't mind her." Sarah only nodded softly. She followed Rebecca into the house, her observant eyes discreetly scanning the space. The vast marble-floored entryway, gleaming hardwood floors, crystal chandeliers, everything so clean it felt sterile rather than lived in, especially for a home with 4-year-old twins. The next morning dawned clear and bright, a rare Seattle sight that bathed the mansion in golden light. Sarah began her first duties meticulously. Laundry, preparing breakfast, tidying the nursery. She worked efficiently but quietly, her movements betraying her professional background in pediatric care. When she first entered the twins' room, Sarah was struck by their identical appearance. Same chestnut curls, same delicate features. Only a small beauty mark on Grace's left cheek distinguished her from Emily. Both girls watched her with cautious eyes, their small bodies tensing as she approached. "Hello there," Sarah said softly, kneeling to meet them at eye level. "I'm Sarah. I'll be helping take care of you." Neither child responded, their eyes wide with an apprehension that seemed inappropriate for their age. Sarah noticed faint bruise-like shadows beneath their eyes, their complexions paler than healthy children should be. When she reached out slowly to check Emily's forehead for fever, the child flinched almost imperceptibly. Sarah's nursing instincts immediately activated. These weren't merely shy children. They showed signs of trauma or chronic stress. She continued speaking softly, her voice taking on the gentle tone she had used with frightened children in the hospital. "Would you like to hear a story? I know lots of them." After 15 minutes of patient storytelling, Emily ventured a small smile. Grace remained withdrawn but had stopped watching the door anxiously. When Sarah sang a quiet lullaby, both girls began to relax, their tiny shoulders dropping from their defensive posture. Michael walked past, pausing at the door when he heard soft giggles coming from the room. The sight of his daughters actually laughing, something that had become increasingly rare, made him stop and watch silently. "You seem great with the little ones," he said, entering the room. Sarah replied quietly, "I just think they need more talking to, Mr. Reynolds. At this age, children understand more than we realize." Michael nodded, his gaze momentarily softening as he observed Emily reaching for Sarah's hand without fear. From the kitchen below, Rebecca looked up through the doorway crack, her hand gripping a coffee mug so tightly that a faint crack appeared in the ceramic. She quickly walked in, a practiced smile plastered on her face. Sarah, you don't need to hold them that long. Children can get spoiled if they're carried all day. Sarah politely lowered her head in acknowledgement, but before putting Grace down in her small chair, she gently kissed the child's forehead. That simple gesture of genuine affection made Rebecca's expression change for a fleeting moment, something dark flashing across her features before the pleasant mask returned. In the following days, the house became eerily quiet. Sarah worked efficiently, mopping floors, doing laundry, watching the twins. But every time she attempted to get closer to the children, Rebecca appeared, as if materializing from thin air, standing on the stairs or sitting in the corner of the kitchen, her eyes observing like a silent warden. Sarah noticed Rebecca never let anyone else prepare food for the twins. Every morning she mixed their milk herself, allowing no help, not even from Sarah. Once Sarah lightly asked, "May I help you with the morning bottles? I just want to learn how you care for them." Rebecca looked at her, the smile not reaching her eyes. "No need, I'm used to doing it. You just need to clean the rooms." Michael was constantly busy, usually leaving early in the morning and returning late at night. He had handed over all household matters, schedules, and even bills to Rebecca. "I trust you can handle it," he often said, to which she only replied, "I always give it my best." One late afternoon, the setting sun cast long shadows through the home office windows. Sarah walked past, intending to bring fresh laundry upstairs, when she saw Rebecca bending over the wall safe hidden behind a landscape painting. She stopped short, stepping back into the shadow of the doorway. Rebecca opened the safe, took out a thick envelope, checked its contents quickly, and closed the safe. When she turned around and saw Sarah, she paused for several seconds, her expression unreadable. "Is your shift over?" Rebecca asked, her voice neutral. "Yes, I was just bringing the laundry up," Sarah replied, her heart pounding. Rebecca smiled, placing the envelope on the desk. "Payroll money," she said casually. "You know how to keep a secret, don't you, Sarah?" Their eyes met, a long, heavy second passing between them. Sarah nodded slightly. "I won't say anything, Mrs. Reynolds." "That's a good girl," Rebecca replied, her voice even, then walked away, heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. That night, Sarah sat by the small window in her quarters, the desk lamp illuminating her worn journal. She wrote, "Everything in this house is too quiet, too clean, but unnatural. It's like someone is trying too hard to make it look perfect." She looked up, hearing a soft lullaby echo from the nursery, her own voice, recorded on a device Rebecca had installed to help the twins sleep. Sarah shivered involuntarily, the electronic reproduction of her voice seeming eerie rather than comforting. Upstairs, Rebecca stood by her bedroom window, wine swirling in her glass. The red light of sunset hit the wall, casting a warm hue on her face, but when Sarah's recorded voice sang out, Rebecca's eyes slowly darkened. She put the wine glass down, her voice low, just loud enough for herself to hear. "If you think you can steal his attention," she took a heavy breath, then completed the whisper, "you will regret it." Rebecca picked up her phone, opening a messaging app protected by multiple passwords. Her finger quickly typed, "The new hire is getting too familiar. Need to accelerate plans." She pressed send, then turned off the screen. The light in the room followed suit, leaving only the dim red glow of sunset reflecting off her coldly calculating face. Downstairs, Sarah continued writing in her journal, unaware that at that very moment, the real game had begun, a deadly chess match with the twins as unwitting pawns. The following day, Rebecca sat at the dining table, her back straight, wearing a pristine white shirt. The Seattle Times lay spread wide open before her. On the front page, Michael's photo appeared, confident in a gray suit, standing beside a gleaming new skyscraper downtown. The bold headline read, "Reynolds Architecture Surges. CEO Michael Reynolds invited as keynote speaker at Washington State Economic Conference." Rebecca's lips curved upward as she traced a finger over Michael's photograph. "Excellent, Michael. Finally, you're back where you belong professionally, and everything else is exactly where I want it." Footsteps echoed from the staircase as Sarah carried a breakfast tray. The smell of freshly baked muffins and warm milk wafted through the kitchen. She greeted Rebecca softly, "Good morning, Mrs. Reynolds." Rebecca didn't look up, only responding quietly, "I'll mix the twins' milk myself today." You go mop the floors. Sarah paused slightly, placing the tray on the table. Yes, ma'am. She turned, heading toward the hallway, but before disappearing, her eyes quickly glanced back through the crack in the door. Rebecca opened a high cupboard, taking down a small glass jar with a scraped-off label. She gently shook it, listening to the liquid inside slosh, then tilted the jar, dripping several clear drops into each baby bottle. Each drop fell, dissolving quickly into the milk without a trace. Sarah swallowed hard, her hand gripping the mop handle until her knuckles turned white. Her heart pounded against her ribcage, the sound filling her ears. She took a deep breath, pretending to turn away as if she hadn't seen anything. But in her mind, pieces of a disturbing puzzle began connecting. The twins sleeping too much, their unusual lethargy, the vacant expressions in their eyes, and Rebecca's insistence on personally preparing their milk. Michael came downstairs, phone in hand, his voice urgent. I have to rush to the office. There's an issue with the Lakeside project. Rebecca put the bottles down, her smile bright as sunshine. You go ahead. I've got everything handled here at home, she added, her voice almost pleading. Come home early tonight, darling. Michael nodded, kissing her forehead before leaving. The sound of the door closing echoed through the foyer, and the smile on Rebecca's face slowly disappeared. She turned around, her eyes changing completely, cold, sharp, and calculating as she returned to the milk bottles. At noon, sunlight streamed through the nursery curtains, casting long streaks of light onto the floor. The twins had been given their milk and placed in their beds for a nap. Sarah was tidying the living room when an unusual wheezing sound drew her attention back to the nursery. She moved closer to Grace's bed, where the little girl lay unnaturally still, her face flushed red, breathing labored. Sarah gently nudged her. Grace, sweetie? No response. Emily, lying in the adjacent bed, was also deeply asleep, her lips pale, eyelids twitching slightly, in what appeared to be distress rather than normal dream activity. Panic surged through Sarah as she lifted Grace from the bed and rushed toward the stairs. Mrs. Reynolds! Mrs. Reynolds! Rebecca appeared at the foot of the stairs, still in her neat dress, her face eerily composed. What is it? The twins won't wake up. I keep trying, but they're unresponsive. Look at their breathing, it's not right. Rebecca calmly walked over, her voice light as if discussing the weather. They're just sleeping deeply. You're overreacting. But their breathing is strange. Look! Sarah's voice rose with urgency. Give her to me. Rebecca reached out, taking Grace from Sarah's arms. She held the child close, gently rocking her, humming softly. The melody was strange, slow, drawn out, unclear whether it was meant to be a lullaby or something more sinister. The room suddenly felt cold despite the midday sunshine. Sarah stepped back, watching with growing horror. That humming seemed to crawl under her skin, raising goosebumps along her arms. Every maternal and medical instinct screamed that something was deeply wrong. See, Rebecca said, her eyes still on the child. They just need more sleep. Sarah nodded reluctantly, but her heart raced with mounting concern. As Rebecca turned away, Sarah noticed a faint smudge of what looked like white powder near the woman's collar, stuck to the edge of her otherwise immaculate dress. That night, Sarah lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Sleep eluded her as her mind replayed everything she'd witnessed. The strange drops in the milk, the unnatural sleep patterns of the twins, the cold calculation in Rebecca's eyes when she thought no one was watching. Footsteps echoed on the wooden floor outside her room, slow, steady, as if someone was pacing the hallway. Sarah sat up, grabbed her small flashlight, and quietly stepped out. The weak beam illuminated the dark hallway, casting long shadows as she made her way downstairs. A strip of yellow light shone from beneath the kitchen door. Sarah approached cautiously, her heart thundering in her chest. She pushed the door open slightly, and cold air rushed out. The kitchen was empty, but one cupboard door stood slightly ajar. Sarah pulled it open fully. In the corner of the cabinet, amidst ordinary spice jars, sat a small, unlabeled bottle, cloudy glass containing a clear liquid. She unscrewed the cap carefully, wafting the scent toward her nose as she'd been taught in nursing school. A pungent chemical smell hit her, similar to the sedatives used at the pediatric hospital. Sarah's hands trembled as she quickly pocketed the bottle, her nursing training and instincts overriding any hesitation. Whatever this substance was, it didn't belong in children's milk. "What are you sneaking around for, Sarah?" The voice sounded directly behind her, slow and precise. Sarah froze, her blood turning to ice. She turned slowly to find Rebecca standing there in a white robe reaching her ankles, her hair slightly disheveled, her face half lit by the kitchen light. The effect was ghostly, almost predatory. "Mrs. Reynolds, I just came down for water. I have trouble sleeping sometimes." Rebecca walked closer, one deliberate step at a time, a strong, cold perfume enveloping the air between them. "Insomnia?" Sarah nodded, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Yes, I've always had trouble sleeping in new places." Rebecca smiled, stopping directly in front of Sarah, bending slightly so their faces were inches apart. Her hand touched Sarah's shoulder with surprising weight. "That's fine," she said, her voice soft but carrying a threat that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Just make sure you don't accidentally drink something you shouldn't." When the statement landed between them, soft as silk yet cold as steel, an unmistakable warning. Rebecca walked away, her tall figure casting a long shadow on the wooden floor as she ascended the stairs. Her bedroom door closed with barely a sound, leaving Sarah standing frozen in the kitchen, the bottle burning like fire in her pocket. Sarah stood motionless for what seemed an eternity, the faint yellow kitchen light illuminating her pale face. She pulled her hand from her pocket, staring at the small bottle with growing horror and determination. Whatever game Rebecca was playing, innocent children were being harmed. "I need to know what this is," Sarah whispered to herself, her resolve hardening as the kitchen light flickered, plunging her into momentary darkness. A darkness that seemed to mirror the sinister secret at the heart of the Reynolds mansion. The next morning arrived with a fresh breeze, Seattle covered in a thin mist, moisture rising from Lake Washington like a cold layer of smoke. Weak sunlight filtered through the tree canopy, illuminating Sarah's small bedroom window, where she sat huddled, staring at the glass bottle. She hadn't slept all night, her mind racing with possibilities, each more disturbing than the last. She knew she needed to act. Quickly putting on her coat, she hid the bottle in her pocket and slipped out before the household fully awakened. The crisp morning air cleared her mind as she made her way to Lakeview Pharmacy, the closest establishment that might help identify the mysterious substance. The pharmacy had just opened, the lights inside casting a warm yellow glow against the gray morning. The elderly pharmacist, Dr. Johnson, looked up when Sarah entered, his voice gruff but kind. "Can I help you, miss?" Sarah placed the bottle on the counter, her voice low but firm. "Can you tell me what this is? I found it at my employer's house, and I'm concerned." Dr. Johnson put on his glasses and tilted the bottle under the light, examining it carefully. His expression grew increasingly grave as he studied it. "Diazepam," he said slowly, his voice dropping to match Sarah's hushed tone. "A powerful sedative, part of the benzodiazepine family. It should never be used on infants or young children, and even in adults, excessive use can cause respiratory depression and other serious complications." Sarah's chest tightened as her worst fears were confirmed. So, if a child took a small dose daily, what would happen? They would gradually weaken, sleep excessively, and have slower reflexes. Their development would be impaired. Long-term use could cause permanent damage. The pharmacist's eyes narrowed with concern. "Where exactly did you find this?" Sarah gripped her coat pocket tightly, her mind racing. "I can't tell you. Not yet. But thank you, you've confirmed what I feared." Dr. Johnson watched with worried eyes as Sarah rushed out, calling after her, "That girl is walking into danger." When Sarah returned to the mansion, the sun had risen higher, casting a golden glow across the expansive grounds. In the living room, Michael was adjusting his tie, preparing for his keynote speech at the economic conference. "Mr. Reynolds," Sarah called out, nearly running toward him, "I need to speak with you urgently. It's about the twins." Michael turned, surprised by her intensity. "What is it, Sarah?" Before she could speak, Rebecca appeared from the kitchen, elegant in a dark blue dress that accentuated her slender figure. Her smile was radiant, but her eyes fixed on Sarah with warning intensity. "Michael, let me handle Sarah. She seems tired. Perhaps she's not used to the schedule here." "No, Sarah tried to interject, but Michael held up his hand, glancing at his watch. I'm already late for the conference. Sarah, we'll talk when I return. She could only watch helplessly as he walked out the door, the black Tesla pulling away from the circular driveway, leaving a trail of scattered gravel in its wake. Rebecca stood behind Sarah, holding a teacup, her eyes never leaving Sarah's face. You look worried, Sarah. Have some tea. It might help. Sarah stepped back, shaking her head. Thank you. I'm not thirsty. Not thirsty? Rebecca's smile tightened slightly as she placed the teacup on the side table. Fine then. Get to work. I don't like anyone in this house being idle. Throughout the day, the mansion felt suffocated by a thick atmosphere of unspoken tension. Sarah worked mechanically, mopping, doing laundry, watching the twins, but her mind raced, formulating a plan. Every time she tried to approach the children, Rebecca materialized nearby, observing her every move with the vigilance of a hawk watching its prey. The twins seemed weaker today, eating less, their eyes struggling to focus. Each time Sarah witnessed Rebecca mixing their milk, she felt physically ill, knowing what was happening but powerless to stop it without concrete proof that Michael would believe. Late in the afternoon, Rebecca announced she was going out to buy groceries for dinner. As the door closed behind her, Sarah immediately reached for her cell phone, fingers trembling as she dialed Dr. Johnson's number. It's me, Sarah. Can you send me an official report on that bottle of medicine? I need documentation, something to prove what's happening to protect these children. Yes, I'll email it right away, Dr. Johnson replied, his voice serious. But Sarah, you need to be extremely careful. That type of medication in the wrong hands. The front door slammed open, cutting the call short. Sarah jumped, nearly dropping her phone as Rebecca walked in, the afternoon sun creating a sharp silhouette behind her. Who are you calling, Sarah? Rebecca's voice was dangerously calm. Just a friend. Sarah tried to keep her voice steady as she quickly pocketed her phone. Rebecca didn't reply. She approached slowly, her steps measured and deliberate. When she was just an arm's length away, she suddenly snatched the phone from Sarah's pocket, examining the screen where the last message was still visible. Report on diazepam sent to Sarah Miller. Rebecca's eyes flashed with cold fury. Without a word, she threw the phone to the floor, stomping on it with her heel. The brittle shattering sound echoed through the foyer as glass and plastic splintered across the polished hardwood. Sarah backed away, her chest tight with fear, as Rebecca leaned down, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Listen carefully, each word precise as a surgeon's cut. Never try to frighten Michael. Don't interfere in matters you don't understand. Rebecca's eyes bore into Sarah's with terrifying intensity. If you jeopardize my happiness, she paused, standing up straight, her face inches from Sarah's. I will make you disappear before anyone even remembers your name. After delivering this chilling threat, Rebecca calmly adjusted her collar as if nothing had happened, then turned and walked away. The door to her study closed with a soft click that somehow sounded more menacing than a slam. Sarah knelt down, picking up the shattered remains of her phone. A piece of glass cut her finger, and blood welled up, dripping onto the floor in a small, bright red spot against the pristine wood. She looked at it, a tiny crimson marker in this house of secrets, then whispered with quiet determination, No, I won't give up. Those children need someone to fight for them. Outside, the sun began its descent over Lake Washington, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. Inside the mansion, Rebecca stood by the second-floor window, looking down at the garden below. The wind gently moved the curtains as the last rays of daylight illuminated the faint, satisfied smile on her lips. The smile of someone who believed they had secured total control. The Seattle morning arrived wrapped in fog, a thick, persistent drizzle falling since the night before. Sarah sat at her small desk, the first light of dawn barely penetrating the gray mist outside her window. She stared at the broken pieces of her phone arranged carefully on a handkerchief. Blood from her cut finger had dried on the shattered screen, a stark reminder of Rebecca's threat. Without a phone, without evidence, without allies, the odds seemed insurmountable. Yet the image of Emily and Grace, their tiny bodies growing weaker each day, strengthened her resolve. In her years as a pediatric nurse, Sarah had sworn to protect children. That oath extended beyond hospital walls. She wrapped the remnants of her phone in the handkerchief and tucked it into her drawer. The distant sound of Rebecca moving about the kitchen prompted Sarah to action. She needed a plan, and she needed it now. The mansion felt different that morning, colder. Shadows seemed to stretch longer across the hardwood floors, and every creak of the old house sounded like a warning. Sarah moved through her morning routine with mechanical precision, hyper-aware of Rebecca's eyes following her every movement. "Good morning, Sarah." Rebecca's voice floated from the kitchen doorway, sweet as honey, but with an undercurrent of venom. "I hope you slept well after our little misunderstanding last night." Sarah looked up, forcing her features into neutrality despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "Good morning, Mrs. Reynolds. Yes, thank you." Rebecca smiled, the expression never reaching her eyes. "Wonderful. The twins need their bath this morning. I've prepared their bottles." She gestured to two baby bottles on the counter, filled with milk. "Make sure they drink every drop before their nap." Sarah stared at the bottles, knowing exactly what they contained. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked them up, the weight of complicity heavy in her palms. "Is something wrong?" Rebecca's questions sliced through the air. "No, Mrs. Reynolds. Everything's fine." Rebecca watched her for a long moment before turning away. "Mr. Reynolds called. His conference runs late today. He won't be home until evening." Another day without Michael's protection. Another day where Rebecca had complete control. Sarah nodded, clutching the bottles tighter as she headed upstairs to the twins' room. Emily and Grace sat quietly in their beds, still in their pajamas, their identical faces turning towards Sarah as she entered. Unlike most 4-year-olds, they didn't bounce with energy or chatter excitedly. Their movements were sluggish, eyes struggling to focus, the effects of prolonged sedation evident in every delayed reaction. "Good morning, sweethearts." Sarah placed the bottles on the dresser and knelt between their beds. "How are we feeling today?" Grace reached for Sarah's hand, her tiny fingers cold against Sarah's skin. Emily watched from her bed, silent but observant. Neither child spoke much anymore, another warning sign that had been deliberately overlooked. Sarah glanced at the door to ensure they were alone, then leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I need to check something, okay? It won't hurt, I promise." With gentle movements born from years of pediatric nursing, Sarah examined the twins. Their pupils were dilated, pulse slightly slower than normal. When she pressed lightly on Emily's abdomen, the child winced, potential side effects of the medication affecting her digestive system. The bottles stood on the dresser, their contents seemingly innocent. Sarah made her decision. She walked to the adjoining bathroom, emptied both bottles down the sink, and refilled them with regular milk from the small refrigerator kept in the twins' room for night feedings. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it would give the children one day without poison. When she returned, she helped the twins drink the untainted milk. For the first time in weeks, they might experience a normal day without chemical interference. The risk was enormous. Rebecca would certainly check if the twins showed different behavior, but Sarah couldn't bear to be the instrument of their suffering any longer. As she bathed the twins, Sarah's mind raced through potential allies. Martha had left a warning but no contact information. Dr. Johnson at the pharmacy knew something was wrong but had limited ability to intervene. Michael remained oblivious, his perception clouded by Rebecca's careful manipulation. Sarah needed evidence. Concrete, irrefutable evidence that even the most devoted husband couldn't ignore. After dressing the twins in matching blue dresses, Sarah led them downstairs for breakfast. Rebecca sat at the dining table, newspaper spread before her, a cup of black coffee steaming at her elbow. She looked up, eyes narrowing slightly as she observed the children. "They seem energetic this morning." Her statement carried a question within it. "They slept well," Sarah replied, helping the twins into their chairs. "The bath always brightens them up." Rebecca watched them eat, her gaze calculating. When Emily reached for a second piece of toast, something she hadn't done in weeks, Rebecca's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. Did they finish their bottles completely? The question cut through the breakfast chatter. "Every drop," Sarah confirmed, meeting Rebecca's stare directly. The silent confrontation stretched between them, neither woman willing to yield. Finally, Rebecca stood, smoothing her immaculate dress. "I'll be in my study. The twins need their nap at 11. Not a minute later." Sarah nodded, relief washing through her as Rebecca left the room. The small victory felt hollow. She had bought the children a few hours of clarity, but without a permanent solution, they remained in danger. After breakfast, Sarah took the twins to the garden, grateful for a rare dry morning. Watching them play, she noticed subtle changes already. Their movements became more coordinated, their eyes brighter. Emily even laughed when a butterfly landed on her finger, a sound so pure it brought tears to Sarah's eyes. While the children played, Sarah searched the garden shed, looking for anything that might serve as a recording device. Among dusty gardening tools and forgotten holiday decorations, she found an old digital camera. The battery was dead, but when plugged in, the small screen flickered to life. It had video recording capabilities. Primitive by current standards, but functional. Sarah slipped the camera into her pocket just as Rebecca's voice called from the back door. "Sarah, phone call for you on the landline. It's urgent." Hurrying inside, Sarah found Rebecca holding the cordless phone, her expression unreadable. "It's Dr. Johnson from the pharmacy. Something about test results." Sarah's heart lurched. The pharmacy report on the diazepam, her evidence. She reached for the phone, but Rebecca pulled it back slightly. "What test results would those be, Sarah?" "Those be, Sarah?" The question dripped with dangerous curiosity. "A routine health screening," Sarah lied, extending her hand more firmly, "for my nursing certification renewal." Rebecca surrendered the phone with obvious reluctance, hovering nearby as Sarah pressed it to her ear. "Dr. Johnson, this is Sarah Miller." "Sarah," his voice came through clearly, concern evident in every syllable. "I've analyzed that sample. It's definitely diazepam, but at a concentration much higher than standard pharmaceutical preparations. This is dangerous stuff, especially for children." Sarah felt Rebecca's eyes boring into her back. "Yes, I understand. And the paperwork we discussed? I've prepared a full report. It's ready whenever you can pick it up. But Sarah, this is serious. If someone is administering this to children, we have a legal obligation to report it." "I'll handle it from here. Thank you for your thoroughness." Sarah kept her voice neutral despite the thundering of her heart. "I'll be in touch soon." She hung up, turning to face Rebecca, whose expression had hardened into marble. "Certification renewal, you said?" Rebecca's voice was soft, dangerous. "Yes, annual requirement." Sarah moved toward the kitchen, desperate to escape the confrontation. Rebecca stepped into her path. "Funny thing about lies, Sarah. They multiply like cancer cells, each one requiring another to sustain it. Before long, the body is riddled with terminal." The metaphor landed like a physical blow. Sarah stood her ground, though every instinct screamed to retreat. "I should check on the twins. They're fine where they are." Rebecca's hand shot out, gripping Sarah's wrist with surprising strength. "Let's be clear about something. This is my home. Those are my children now. Michael is my husband. Whatever misguided crusade you think you're on ends today." Sarah pulled her arm free, rubbing the red marks left by Rebecca's fingers. "They're not your children. They're Michael's daughters, and they deserve protection." "Protection?" Rebecca laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "From what? A loving mother who wants only the best for them? Is that what you call drugging them into submission? The best?" Rebecca's face transformed, mask slipping to reveal something cold and reptilian beneath. "You have no idea what I've saved them from. What I'm still saving them from." "What does that mean?" Sarah demanded, genuine confusion momentarily overriding her fear. But Rebecca had recovered, pleasant facade sliding back into place. "It means you're overstepping, Sarah. Dangerously so." She glanced at her watch. "It's nearly 11. The children need their nap." The dismissal was clear. Sarah retreated to the garden, gathering the twins who had begun to show true signs of childhood energy, running, laughing, exploring their environment with natural curiosity. Leading them upstairs for their scheduled nap felt like betrayal. In the nursery, Rebecca waited with 2 fresh bottles. "I'll take it from here," she said, the words pleasant but the tone allowing no argument. Sarah hesitated, looking at the twins, then at the bottles. "Is there a problem?" Rebecca challenged. "No," Sarah replied, hating herself for the surrender. "No problem." She left the room, closing the door behind her, but didn't walk away. Instead, she pressed her ear against the wood, listening as Rebecca cooed false endearments to the twins while feeding them what Sarah knew was poison. When Rebecca emerged 10 minutes later, she carried the empty bottles. They're settling down now. Such good girls. She smiled at Sarah. You should take your lunch break. You look tired. Sarah waited until Rebecca descended the stairs before slipping back into the nursery. Emily and Grace lay in their beds, already showing signs of the sedative taking effect. Their eyelids fluttered, struggling to remain open. Sarah knelt between them, checking their pulses, finding them already slowing. I'm so sorry, she whispered, throat tight with unshed tears. I'm going to fix this, I promise. Grace's small hand reached out, fingers brushing Sarah's cheek in a gesture of forgiveness that broke her heart. Sarah stayed until both children succumbed to the drug-induced sleep, then quietly closed their door. In the hallway, she removed the camera from her pocket, powering it on. She needed evidence, and now she had a plan to get it. The afternoon stretched endlessly, the mansion silent except for the occasional phone call to Rebecca's study and the persistent drumming of rain on the windows. Sarah used the time to explore parts of the house she'd previously had no reason to enter. The basement door remained locked, as it had since her arrival. Michael's home office was accessible but yielded nothing useful, just architectural plans and business documents. It was in Rebecca's private study that Sarah found her first real clue. Taking advantage of Rebecca's weekly tennis lesson, the one commitment she maintained regardless of weather, Sarah slipped into the immaculate room. Unlike the rest of the house, which reflected Michael's architectural preferences for open spaces and natural light, Rebecca's study felt claustrophobic. Heavy curtains blocked the windows, dark wood paneling absorbed what little light remained, and filing cabinets lined one entire wall. Sarah tried the cabinets first. Most contained household records, nothing incriminating. The computer on the desk required a password she couldn't guess. But wedged between two books on the shelf, she discovered a small, leather-bound journal. The first pages contained mundane entries about household management and social engagements. Deeper in, however, the tone changed dramatically. Rebecca's elegant handwriting became sharper, the pressure of her pen leaving indentations on subsequent pages. The girls resisted their medicine again today. M remains blind to their manipulation. They turn angelic the moment he enters the room, but I see through their performance. Just like their mother, using their feminine wiles to control him. I won't allow it. Sarah's hands trembled as she turned the page. Increased dosage by 1.5 millimoliter today. Effectiveness improved. E slept through dinner. G attempted resistance but ultimately succumbed. M noticed nothing, too absorbed in his precious work. When will he see that I'm saving his daughters from becoming like her? The entries continued, documenting with clinical precision the systematic drugging of two innocent children. But it was the final entry, dated just 3 days earlier, that chilled Sarah to her core. Dr. A provided stronger formula, claims it's untraceable in standard tests. Perfect timing, as the nosy nurse grows increasingly problematic. Accelerated timetable may be necessary. M has updated his will as suggested. Once legal adoption is complete, contingencies can be implemented. The lake house would be ideal, private, remote. Accidents happen so easily near water. Sarah photographed every page with the digital camera, hands shaking so badly she had to retake several shots. The journal outlined not just ongoing abuse, but a developing plan for something far worse. She returned the journal to its hiding place, heart pounding so loudly she feared Rebecca might hear it from across town. The pieces aligned with terrifying clarity. Rebecca was methodically sedating the twins, had manipulated Michael into changing his will, and planned to implement contingencies once she had legal claim to the children and presumably the Reynolds fortune. Sarah was so absorbed in processing this revelation that she didn't hear the front door open. Only the sound of heels clicking on hardwood alerted her to Rebecca's premature return. Panicking, Sarah slipped behind the heavy curtains just as the study door swung open. Rebecca entered, phone pressed to her ear. Tennis was canceled. Marianne claimed weather, but I suspect she's avoiding me after the board meeting incident. She laughed, the sound devoid of genuine mirth. No, Alex, it doesn't change anything. The paperwork is moving forward. Michael signs the final adoption papers next week, making me their legal mother in every sense. She paused, listening to the person on the other end of the line. Of course I've considered the nurse. She's becoming problematic, asking questions, snooping around. I caught her giving the girls regular milk this morning instead of their special formula. Rebecca's voice hardened. No, I can handle her. She'll be gone before she becomes a genuine threat. Sarah pressed herself against the window, scarcely daring to breathe. The curtain provided minimal concealment. If Rebecca moved closer or drew them back, discovery was inevitable. The real issue is accelerating the timetable, Rebecca continued. Once the adoption is finalized, we move to phase 2 immediately. The property transfers alone will be worth millions, not counting the life insurance and company shares. A pause. Yes, I know drowning investigations are thorough. That's why it won't look like drowning. Not initially. The coldness with which Rebecca discussed what sounded like murder plans made Sarah's blood freeze in her veins. I should go. The nurse will be checking on the twins soon. We'll finalize details tonight. Rebecca ended the call, sighing heavily before exiting the study. Sarah remained hidden for several minutes, ensuring Rebecca had truly departed. When she finally emerged, her legs nearly buckled beneath her. The situation was far worse than she'd imagined. This wasn't just about controlling the twins through medication. Rebecca planned to kill them after securing her position legally. Rushing back to her room, Sarah hid the camera containing the journal evidence under her mattress. She needed to contact Michael immediately, but without her phone and with Rebecca vigilantly monitoring the landline, communication seemed impossible. Then she remembered. Martha had left her something. A warning, yes, but perhaps also a means of help. Sarah searched her dresser drawer where she'd stored the few possessions Martha had pressed into her hand that first day. Among them was a small business card with a handwritten number on the back. Call if they need you, Martha had whispered. Using the house phone was too risky with Rebecca somewhere in the mansion. Sarah would need to wait for an opportunity to leave the property, perhaps when Michael returned, creating a distraction. The sound of the twins crying pulled Sarah from her planning. Not their usual sedated whimpers, but genuine distressed sobs. She hurried to their room, finding Rebecca attempting to administer additional medicine through a dropper. They woke up early, Rebecca explained, frustration evident in her tight voice. They need more rest. They've been asleep for hours, Sarah protested, moving to Grace's side where the child clung to her arm. They need activity, not more sedation. I decide what they need. Rebecca's voice dropped dangerously low. You're merely an employee here, Sarah. Don't forget that. Emily began crying harder, reaching for Sarah while pushing away the dropper Rebecca held. The rejection visibly angered Rebecca, her composed facade cracking further. See what you've done? You've confused them, made them disobedient. Rebecca grabbed Emily's arm roughly. Take your medicine like a good girl. Stop it, you're hurting her, Sarah intervened, placing herself between Rebecca and the child. For a moment, the two women stood locked in silent confrontation. Rebecca's eyes blazing with fury, Sarah's with protective determination. Then Rebecca stepped back, smoothing her expression with visible effort. Fine. They can stay awake for now, but this defiance will be addressed. She placed the dropper on the nightstand. When Michael returns, we'll discuss your continued employment. After Rebecca left, Sarah held both trembling children close. Their tears soaked her shirt as she murmured reassurances. Despite the danger, she felt a grim satisfaction. The twins had recognized their tormentor and chosen to trust her instead. It was a small victory in an increasingly desperate situation. The afternoon stretched into evening. Michael called to say his speech had gone exceptionally well, but networking obligations would keep him late. Each passing hour increased Sarah's anxiety. She needed to get the twins away from Rebecca, but without transportation, evidence in hand, or legal standing, options were limited. At dinner, Rebecca was icily polite, cutting the twins' food into precise pieces while discussing the weather as if nothing were amiss. The children picked at their meals, their brief period of alertness fading as the earlier dose of sedative maintained its grip on their small systems. They're not eating much, Sarah observed, trying to keep accusation from her tone. Children have varying appetites, Rebecca replied smoothly. As a nurse, you should know that. As a nurse, I know signs of consistent sedation when I see them. Rebecca's knife scraped against the plate with sudden force. Careful, Sarah, very careful. The veiled threat hung between them as they finished the meal in tense silence. After dinner, while Rebecca made phone calls in her study, Sarah used the opportunity to search for Martha's contact information. The business card revealed a local number with no name, just the handwritten message. Using the kitchen phone, hidden from view by the pantry door, Sarah dialed with shaking fingers. Sullivan Residence. Martha's familiar voice sent a wave of relief through Sarah. "Martha, it's Sarah Miller from the Reynolds house," she whispered, constantly checking for Rebecca's approach. "The twins are in danger. Rebecca's been drugging them, and I found evidence she's planning something worse." "I knew it," Martha hissed. "That woman had darkness in her from the first day. Have you told Michael?" "I can't reach him, and Rebecca destroyed my phone. But I have proof now, journal entries, photos of the medication." "Listen carefully." Martha's voice dropped lower. "There's a camera in the backyard, hidden in the old oak tree facing the house. I installed it after Mrs. Reynolds, the real Mrs. Reynolds, Jessica, passed away. I was worried about the children being alone with strangers." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Does it still work?" "Should do. It runs on a separate system Michael doesn't even know about. Records directly to my home computer. If you can get Rebecca doing something on camera, we'll have undeniable proof." "I need to get the twins out of here tonight," Sarah insisted. "The journal mentioned implementing contingencies soon." "Michael returns tonight, yes? Wait for him. Show him the evidence. Don't confront Rebecca alone. She's dangerous." The sound of heels on hardwood alerted Sarah. "I have to go. Please be ready if I call again." She hung up just as Rebecca rounded the corner. "Who were you talking to?" "My mother," Sarah lied smoothly. "Checking in since my phone broke." Rebecca's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "How thoughtful of you to use my home phone without asking permission." "I apologize, it won't happen again." "No," Rebecca agreed, her smile not reaching her eyes. "It won't." The evening progressed with excruciating slowness. Sarah bathed the twins, read them stories, and tucked them into bed, all under Rebecca's watchful eye. The woman never left them alone together, clearly suspicious of Sarah's influence. After the children fell asleep, Rebecca approached Sarah in the hallway. "You should retire early tonight. You look exhausted." Her tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. Sarah nodded, retreating to her room where she placed a chair against the doorknob. A flimsy protection, but better than nothing. Sleep was impossible. She sat by the window, watching raindrops trace patterns on the glass. The digital camera clutched in her hand like a talisman. Shortly after midnight, headlights cut through the darkness as Michael's car pulled into the driveway. Sarah breathed her first genuine sigh of relief in hours. She waited, listening as he entered the house, as murmured conversation drifted up from below as footsteps ascended the stairs and moved toward the master bedroom. Now was her chance. With Michael home, Rebecca would be occupied. Sarah slipped from her room, digital camera tucked securely in her pocket, and made her way silently to the twins' room. Her plan was simple: take the children to Michael, show him the evidence, and force a confrontation where Rebecca couldn't manipulate the narrative. The nursery door opened silently. Sarah approached the sleeping children, heart aching at their unnaturally still forms. As she gently touched Emily's shoulder, a voice spoke from the corner. "I wondered how long it would take you to make your move." Rebecca sat in the rocking chair, partially hidden by shadows. In her hand gleamed something metal, the small key to the medicine cabinet. "You're predictable, Sarah. Noble perhaps, but utterly predictable." Sarah stood protectively before the children's beds. "It's over, Rebecca. I have evidence of everything. The journal, the medication, your plans. Michael will know the truth tonight." Rebecca laughed softly, the sound sending chills down Sarah's spine. "What truth? That I've been managing the twins' severe anxiety disorder? That I've consulted with specialists about their treatment? That their former nurse has become delusional and obsessive? You've been systematically drugging them to control them. You've been plotting to harm them after securing your position legally." "Interesting theory." Rebecca stood, moving into the faint moonlight streaming through the window. "Unfortunately for you, my husband trusts me implicitly. The loving stepmother versus the unstable employee who broke into my private study and stole my personal journal. Which narrative do you think he'll believe?" Sarah's hand closed around the camera in her pocket. He'll believe evidence, facts, medical reports. Perhaps, Rebecca stepped closer. But you won't be presenting that evidence tonight. The attack came with startling speed. Rebecca lunged forward, grabbing Sarah's arm and twisting it behind her back. The force sent both women crashing into the dresser. Glass shattered as picture frames fell. The twins awakened, crying out in fear. "Stop! You'll hurt the children," Sarah gasped, struggling against Rebecca's surprisingly strong grip. "They'll go back to sleep," Rebecca hissed, her voice devoid of humanity. "They always do." Sarah fought back, training from hospital security drills kicking in. She drove her elbow backward, connecting with Rebecca's ribs. The woman grunted in pain, loosening her grip enough for Sarah to break free. "Michael!" Sarah shouted, rushing toward the door. "Michael, come quickly!" Rebecca recovered quickly, grabbing a heavy crystal paperweight from the dresser and swinging it toward Sarah's head. Sarah dodged, the object missing her by inches and shattering against the wall. The commotion brought pounding footsteps down the hall. Michael appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled from sleep, eyes wide with confusion as he took in the chaotic scene. His crying children, his wife breathing heavily, the young nurse backed against the wall. "What in God's name is happening here?" he demanded. Rebecca's transformation was immediate and chilling. Her face crumpled, tears appearing on command as she rushed to Michael's side. "Oh, Michael, thank goodness. I caught her trying to take the children. She's been acting strangely, obsessed with them. When I confronted her, she attacked me." "That's not true," Sarah protested, reaching for the camera in her pocket. "She's been drugging your daughters, Michael. I have proof." "Drugging?" Michael looked bewildered, his gaze moving from Sarah to the terrified twins. "What are you talking about?" Sarah pulled out the camera, hands trembling with urgency. "It's all here. Her journal entries documenting the sedatives. Her plans after the adoption is finalized. She's been methodically poisoning Emily and Grace." Rebecca's performance elevated to new heights. "Michael, she's clearly unstable. I've noticed her strange behavior with the children, how possessive she's become. I was going to speak to you about it tomorrow." Michael's expression darkened as he looked between the two women. The scene painted an obvious picture: his elegant wife in a silk nightgown, distressed and tearful, versus the wild-eyed nurse making outlandish accusations. "Michael, please," Sarah begged, holding out the camera. "Just look at the evidence. Test the children's blood. You'll find diazepam, a powerful sedative she's been putting in their milk." A flicker of doubt crossed Michael's face. He stepped towards Sarah, hand extended for the camera. Rebecca saw her control slipping. With calculated precision, she moved to the twins' bed, gathering both crying children in her arms. "How dare you, after everything I've done for this family?" "Michael, she needs to leave, now." Michael hesitated, torn between his wife's distress and Sarah's desperate conviction. "Sarah, perhaps you should—" The sound of a phone ringing cut through the tension. Michael's cell phone vibrated on the nightstand where he'd left it. He glanced at it, then back at the confrontation before him. "Answer it," Sarah urged, sensing an ally. "It might be important." Michael picked up the phone, frowning at the unfamiliar number. "Hello?" Sarah watched as his expression shifted from confusion to shock. "Martha? What? Slow down. I can barely understand you." Rebecca's face drained of color at the housekeeper's name. "What video? From where?" Michael's questions came rapidly, his gaze drifting to Rebecca with growing suspicion. "You've been recording the backyard for how long?" Rebecca released the twins, moving toward Michael with practiced desperation. "Darling, whatever she's saying, be quiet," he commanded, a tone Sarah had never heard him use before. "Martha, I'm putting you on speaker. Say again what you just told me." Martha's voice filled the room, strong despite her age. "I have video from the security camera in the backyard. It shows Rebecca burying medication bottles in the garden and making phone calls about changing your will and planning accidents for the children. I've sent the clips to your email and contacted Dr. Harrison at Seattle General. He's prepared to examine the girls immediately." The room fell silent except for the twins' quieting sobs. Michael stared at Rebecca, seeing her clearly perhaps for the first time. "Is this true?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Rebecca's transformation was immediate and terrifying. The mask of loving stepmother shattered. revealing something cold and calculating to Nuth. You don't understand what those girls put me through. Their constant needs, their manipulation. They turned you against me, just like their mother did. Their mother, Ball? Michael repeated, disbelief etched into every feature. Jessica never turned me against anyone. She was the kindest person I've ever known. Kind? Rebecca spat the word like poison. She was weak, and she was raising your daughters to be weak too. I was saving them, making them stronger, teaching them discipline. Michael stepped back as if physically struck by her words. By drugging them? By plotting to harm them? I would never have harmed them, Rebecca insisted, but her eyes darted to the window, calculating escape routes. I was preparing them for the real world, making them resilient. Sarah moved to the twins, gathering them protectively as the truth unfolded before Michael's horrified eyes. Emily buried her face against Sarah's shoulder, while Grace watched her stepmother with surprising clarity, as if seeing the monster beneath the beautiful facade for the first time. Michael's voice shook with barely controlled rage. Get out of my house, now! This is my house too, Rebecca countered, desperation creeping into her tone. I'm their mother now. The adoption papers are worthless if obtained through deception. Michael lifted his phone. Martha has already contacted my attorney with the evidence. Whatever legal claim you thought you were establishing is gone. Rebecca's composure crumbled entirely. She lunged towards Sarah and the twins, face contorted with rage. You can't take them from me. I made them perfect. Michael intercepted her, physically restraining her as she thrashed and screamed. Sarah, take the girls to the car. We're going to the hospital immediately. Sarah didn't need to be told twice. Gathering both children in her arms, she hurried from the room, their small bodies clinging to her like lifelines. Behind her, Rebecca's screams devolved into animalistic howls of fury. You'll regret this! Her voice followed them down the hallway. All of you! They were mine! Mine! Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The night air felt cleansing after the poisonous atmosphere of the mansion. Sarah placed the twins in Michael's car, buckling them securely as flashing lights appeared at the end of the driveway. Someone, Martha presumably, had called the police. As officers approached the house, Sarah held the twins close, their small heads resting against her shoulders. For the first time since arriving at the Reynolds mansion, they looked peaceful, unburdened by chemical restraints and fear. Michael emerged minutes later, face ashen but resolute as he watched Rebecca being escorted to a police cruiser. Still screaming accusations and threats, he joined Sarah and his daughters by the car, dropping to his knees before them. I'm so sorry, he whispered, voice breaking. I should have seen it. I should have protected you. Emily reached out a small hand, touching her father's cheek in silent forgiveness. Grace remained pressed against Sarah, watching the scene with solemn eyes that had witnessed too much for someone so young. Michael looked up at Sarah, gratitude and shame mingling in his expression. If you hadn't been here, Sarah nodded, understanding the unfinished thought. If she hadn't intervened, Rebecca's plan might have succeeded. 2 innocent children might have been sacrificed to a disturbed woman's obsession with control and wealth. We should get them to the hospital, she said gently. They'll need to be properly examined and evidence collected. Michael nodded, rising to his feet with new determination. And then we'll rebuild. Together, if you are willing to stay with us through this. Sarah looked down at the twins, their faces already showing signs of returning awareness as the sedatives began to fade from their systems. Despite everything, they had survived. Despite everything, they could heal. I'm not going anywhere, she promised, both to Michael and to the children who had claimed a piece of her heart. As they drove away from the mansion toward the hospital, the clouds parted briefly, revealing a full moon hanging low over Lake Washington. Its light rippled across the water's surface, transforming ordinary waves into something magical. Tears of silver, washing away the darkness of what had nearly happened, illuminating the path toward healing that lay ahead. The storm that had threatened Seattle for days finally broke with apocalyptic fury as Michael's car approached Seattle Grace Hospital. Thunder cracked across the night sky while lightning illuminated the emergency entrance in harsh, stuttering flashes. Rain pounded against the ambulance bay doors with such force it sounded like thousands of tiny fists demanding entry. Inside the pediatric wing, Michael stood at the window watching nature's rage mirror the tempest in his soul. Behind him, Emily and Grace slept in adjacent beds, their first peaceful rest in months. No sedatives, no drugs, just the natural exhaustion of small bodies beginning to heal. The preliminary blood tests had confirmed Sarah's worst fears. The pediatric specialist, Dr. Harrison, had found diazepam levels 5 times the therapeutic dose for an adult in both children's bloodstreams, along with traces of other sedatives. His exact words still echoed in Michael's mind. What's been done to these children is criminal, Mr. Reynolds. Unconscionable. The fact that they show no immediate signs of permanent damage is nothing short of miraculous. Sarah hadn't left the twins' side since their arrival 6 hours earlier. She sat between their beds, occasionally smoothing a stray curl from Grace's forehead or adjusting Emily's blanket, refusing both food and rest despite Michael's insistence. "You should try to sleep," Michael said quietly, turning from the window. "Dr. Harrison said they'll be out until morning." Sarah shook her head, the dark circles under her eyes testifying to her exhaustion. "I need to be here when they wake up. They'll be confused, scared." Michael pulled a chair beside hers. For several minutes they sat in silence, watching the gentle rise and fall of small chests, listening to the soft beep of monitors, confirming steady heartbeats and normal oxygen levels. "I failed them," Michael finally whispered, voice breaking. "Their own father, and I couldn't see what was happening right in front of me." Sarah turned to him, expression gentle yet firm. Rebecca was a master manipulator. She knew exactly how to present herself, how to explain away concerns, how to keep you distracted with work and social obligations. "That's no excuse. They're my daughters." "Yes, they are, and they need you strong now, not drowning in guilt." Sarah's voice carried the practical compassion of her nursing training. "They need their father to protect them going forward." Michael nodded slowly, gaze returning to the sleeping twins. "Have you spoken with the police?" "Briefly. They'll want detailed statements tomorrow." "Martha arrived about an hour ago. She's speaking with them now." "Martha," Michael rubbed his temples. 15 years she worked for our family. Jessica trusted her completely. I should have listened when she tried to warn me. Without Martha's security camera footage, we might never have been able to prove what Rebecca was doing." Sarah hesitated. "She told me she installed it after Jessica passed away. She was worried about the children being left with strangers." Michael looked up sharply. "She never told me about any camera. She said she didn't want to upset you, that after Jessica's death you were in such pain." Sarah trailed off. "I think she was trying to protect all of you in her own way." A soft knock interrupted their conversation. Dr. Harrison entered, tablet in hand and expression grave, said, "Mr. Reynolds, Ms. Miller, I have the complete toxicology report." He approached, voice lowered. The diazepam was only part of the picture. "We found traces of other sedatives as well, carefully calibrated to avoid detection in routine screenings. Whoever did this had medical knowledge or access to someone who did." "Will there be lasting effects?" Michael asked, the question that had been torturing him since they arrived. "Children are remarkably resilient," Dr. Harrison replied, tone cautiously optimistic. "With proper nutrition, support, and therapy, they should recover fully. However, I'm required to inform you that Child Protective Services will need to conduct an investigation. Standard procedure in cases like this." Michael paled. "They wouldn't take the girls away, would they?" "Not likely, given that you were unaware and took immediate action once you discovered the abuse, but they'll want to ensure the home environment is safe going forward." Dr. Harrison glanced at the sleeping children. "We'll keep them for observation at least another 24 hours. Try to get some rest yourselves. Tomorrow will be challenging." After the doctor left, Michael slumped in his chair. How did everything go so wrong so quickly? 6 months ago, we were happy. I thought bringing Rebecca into our lives would only make things better. Sarah hesitated, then asked the question that had been troubling her. "How did you meet her?" "At a charity gala for children's mental health, ironically enough." Michael's laugh was hollow. "She approached me, said she admired my work on the children's hospital wing we'd designed. I thought it was fate, a beautiful, intelligent woman who shared my interest in children's welfare." "She targeted you," Sarah said softly. "Martha found evidence she researched wealthy widowers with young children. You weren't the first." Michael's head snapped up. "What?" "The police are investigating, but Martha uncovered connections to at least two other families. In both cases, Rebecca, or whatever her real name is, insinuated herself into their lives. In one case, a child died of what was ruled accidental drowning. The color drained from Michael's face. My God. That's why she was so interested in your lake house property. Remote location, easy access to water. Michael stood abruptly, pacing the small room. I nearly handed my children to a monster. He paused by the window, staring into the storm. What happens now? Now you focus on Emily and Grace. Help them heal. Everything else is secondary. Lightning flashed, illuminating Michael's face, haunted, exhausted, but with a new resolve forming beneath the surface. And Rebecca? In custody, the evidence is overwhelming. Sarah listed the damning pieces. Martha's video footage, the journal entries, toxicology reports, my testimony. She won't be able to hurt anyone else. Michael turned back to Sarah, seeing her, truly seeing her, perhaps for the first time. Not just the capable nurse, but the woman who had risked everything to save his children. Why did you stay? He asked. When you first suspected something was wrong, why not just leave? Report your concerns from a safe distance? Sarah's gaze moved to the sleeping twins, expression softening. I couldn't leave them. Not when I knew they were in danger. She touched Emily's small hand. Some things are worth fighting for, no matter the risk. In that moment, as thunder rolled across the sky and rain lashed against the windows, something shifted between them. A connection forged in crisis, tempered by shared purpose. Get some sleep, Sarah, Michael said, voice gentler. I'll watch over them. This time, Sarah didn't argue. She settled into the reclining chair, exhaustion claiming her within minutes. Michael watched her sleep, this unlikely guardian angel who had entered their lives just in time. Outside, the storm continued its assault on Seattle, but within the hospital room, for the first time in what felt like forever, there was peace. Morning arrived with surprising clarity, the storm having exhausted itself during the night. Sunlight streamed through the hospital windows as Emily was the first to stir, small eyes fluttering open with confusion that quickly turned to fear. Daddy? Her voice was thin, uncertain. Michael was at her side instantly, taking her tiny hand in his. I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now. Emily's gaze darted around the unfamiliar room, panic rising. Where's Rebecca? Is she coming back? No, Emily. Rebecca won't be coming back ever again. I promise. The conviction in his voice seemed to comfort her. She relaxed slightly, then noticed Sarah asleep in the chair. Sarah stayed? All night, Michael confirmed, smiling softly. She wouldn't leave you and Grace. As if hearing her name, Grace began to wake as well, movements sluggish but eyes clearer than they had been in weeks. She didn't speak, but her hand reached out, searching until it found Sarah's. The touch awakened Sarah immediately, professional instincts overriding exhaustion. Good morning, sweetheart, she said, smoothing Grace's hair. How are you feeling? Grace didn't answer directly, but her small fingers tightened around Sarah's. The gesture spoke volumes. The doctor says you can have breakfast soon, Michael told them. Real food, not just that special milk Rebecca gave you. Emily's face clouded. The milk made us sleepy. I didn't like it. I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry you had to drink it. But no more special milk ever again. I promise. Grace finally spoke, voice barely audible. She said if we told you, you wouldn't believe us, that you loved her more than us. Michael felt the words like physical blows. He gathered both girls carefully in his arms, mindful of the IV lines. Nothing and no one in this world could ever be more important to me than you two. I love you more than anything. More than buildings? Emily asked seriously. Despite everything, Michael found himself smiling. Much more than buildings. More than coffee, Grace added, referring to his well-known addiction. Infinitely more than coffee. The girls seemed satisfied with these assurances, settling back against their pillows as a nurse entered with breakfast trays. Well, look who's awake, the nurse beamed at the twins. Dr. Harrison will be so pleased to see you both looking brighter this morning. Who's ready for pancakes? The simple joy that transformed the girls' faces at the mention of pancakes, a food Rebecca had deemed too sugary and banned from the house, broke something open in Michael's heart. How many small pleasures had been denied them? How many childhood delights had Rebecca systematically stripped away under the guise of proper parenting? While the twins ate with increasing enthusiasm, Detective Sloan arrived from Seattle PD, requesting to speak with Michael and Sarah. "We can talk in the hallway," Michael suggested, reluctant to discuss Rebecca within earshot of the girls. Once outside the room, Detective Sloan got straight to the point. Rebecca Hayes is actually Vanessa Mitchell. She has a history of inserting herself into wealthy families with young children, particularly those who have lost a mother. "How did we miss this?" Michael asked. "I had a background check done before we married. It came back clean. She creates impeccable false identities, sophisticated work that costs serious money. We're still piecing together her actual history, but what we've found is disturbing." "The other families," Sarah prompted. "What happened to them?" Detective Sloan consulted his notes. "The Collins family in Portland, 2018. Vanessa, using the name Elizabeth Carter, became nanny to their 6-year-old son. Within 3 months, the boy developed mysterious health problems. 3 months after that, he drowned in their pool while under her care. Ruled accidental." Michael felt physically ill. "And the second family?" "The Thompsons in San Francisco, 2020. She married Alexander Thompson, recently widowed with a 4-year-old daughter. 14 months into the marriage, the daughter, Sophie, died of respiratory failure during a severe asthma attack. Again ruled accidental, though Mr. Thompson had suspicions and hired a private investigator. He could never prove anything." "She was practicing," Sarah whispered, horror dawning on her face, "getting better at it each time." Detective Sloan nodded grimly. "We believe so. With the evidence we have now, we're reopening both cases." "What about her real background?" Michael asked. "Where did she come from? What made her this way?" "Still investigating, but preliminary findings suggest she grew up in the foster system after her mother was institutionalized for Munchausen by proxy, a condition where a caregiver fabricates or induces illness in someone under their care, usually for attention or sympathy." "Like mother, like daughter," Sarah murmured. "With a twist," Detective Sloan added. "Vanessa's version seems financially motivated as well. In both previous cases, she stood to inherit substantial assets upon the children's deaths. Mr. Reynolds, she had already begun the process of having you change your will, hadn't she?" Michael nodded, shame washing over him. "She suggested updating it after we married. I thought it was reasonable, making provisions for her as my wife. I had no idea." "You couldn't have known," Detective Sloan said, more gently than before. "She's fooled a lot of people, including law enforcement. What matters is that this time we caught her before tragedy struck." He glanced toward the hospital room. "Your daughters are very lucky Ms. Miller came into their lives when she did." After providing formal statements, they returned to find the twins finishing their breakfast, color returning to their cheeks, animation to their movements. Dr. Harrison was checking their vitals, expression pleased. "These young ladies are making an impressive recovery," he announced. "If this continues, we might release them tomorrow morning." "Already?" Sarah asked, professional concern evident. "Shouldn't we monitor them longer?" "Physically, they're rebounding quickly. The psychological recovery will take more time, of course. I'm recommending a child psychologist who specializes in cases like this." He handed Michael a business card. "Dr. Elena Patel. She's excellent with trauma recovery in young children." Later that afternoon, Martha arrived with fresh clothes for everyone and news from home. "The police have finished processing the scene," she reported, voice lowered so the twins couldn't hear. "They found quite a collection of medications hidden in Vanessa's private safe, enough to stock a small pharmacy." She hesitated before continuing. "They also found detailed notes about the children's reactions to different doses. Very clinical, very disturbing." "Was there anything about her plans?" Michael asked. "What she intended to do?" Martha nodded solemnly. "Maps of the lake house property with specific locations marked. Notes about accidental drowning scenarios. And," she lowered her voice further, "a draft obituary for the girls." Sarah gasped softly. Michael closed his eyes, the full horror of what they'd narrowly avoided washing over him. "I should never have left them," Martha whispered, a tear escaping. "I knew something was wrong." "You tried to warn me," Michael reminded her. "I didn't listen. If anyone's to blame besides Rebecca, it's me." "Placing blame doesn't help the twins," Sarah interjected gently. What matters now is creating a safe environment for their recovery. Michael nodded, drawing strength from her practical focus. You're right. Martha, when we return home, we'll need to remove everything that might remind them of Rebecca, make it feel like she was never there. Already started, sir. Change the linens, rearrange the furniture in the nursery, put away anything she bought them. Martha's efficiency was comforting in its familiarity. And I've prepared the guest suite for Ms. Miller, assuming she'll be staying to help with the transition. Michael glanced at Sarah, realizing they hadn't discussed what would happen next. I hope she will, he said carefully. Sarah looked through the doorway at the twins, now engaged in a tentative game of cards with a child life specialist. If you want me to stay, I will, for as long as they need me. Thank you, Michael said simply, the words inadequate for the depth of his gratitude. As Sarah returned to the twins, a hospital administrator appeared with unexpected news. Mr. Reynolds, there's a Mr. Alexander Thompson here asking to see you. He says it's regarding Vanessa Mitchell. Michael exchanged glances with Martha. Thompson, the second husband? Yes, he flew in from San Francisco when he heard about the arrest. Says he has information that might help your case. Michael hesitated, looking at the twins. I don't want to delay getting them home. I'll stay with them, Martha offered. You speak with Mr. Thompson. Alexander Thompson waited in a small consultation room, a haggard man in his early 40s whose face carried the unmistakable stamp of grief. He stood when Michael entered, extending his hand. Thank you for seeing me. I know this must be an impossible time for you. Your daughter, Michael said, bypassing pleasantries. Sophie? Pain flashed across Thompson's face. She was 4, beautiful, smart, full of life, until Vanessa entered our world. I'm sorry for your loss. I came because I need you to understand what you're dealing with. The police told me your daughter survived. They're the first. Michael gestured towards a chair. Tell me everything, please. For the next hour, Thompson detailed his nightmare, how Vanessa had charmed him, integrated herself perfectly into their lives, gradually isolated him from friends and family who raised concerns, and slowly poisoned his daughter while positioning herself as the devoted caretaker. I started to suspect something was wrong about a year into our marriage, Thompson explained. Sophie was constantly ill, but only when I wasn't around. Doctors couldn't find anything definitive. When I suggested cameras in the house, Vanessa accused me of not trusting her. How did she? Michael couldn't finish the question. The night Sophie died, we'd had an argument. Vanessa wanted to adopt her formally, but I was hesitating, some instinct holding me back. She stormed out, said she needed time alone. Thompson's voice broke. I fell asleep. When I woke up, she was back, screaming that something was wrong with Sophie. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. Respiratory failure, they said. Her little lungs just stopped working. But you suspected. I knew, but I couldn't prove it. The autopsy showed elevated levels of various medications, but Vanessa had a perfect explanation. Sophie had been on several prescribed medications for her conditions. After the funeral, I hired a private investigator who uncovered her connection to the Collins family, but by then she had disappeared with nearly $2 million from our joint accounts. Michael leaned forward, hands clasped tightly. What do you want from me? Justice, Thompson said simply. Your testimony, combined with mine and the evidence from the Collins case, will ensure she never hurts another child. I've spent 3 years searching for her, waiting for her to resurface. When I saw her arrest on the news, his eyes shone with unshed tears. For the first time since Sophie died, I felt like I could breathe again. Thompson reached into his briefcase, pulling out a file. This is everything my investigator collected. Medical reports, financial records, witness statements from the Collins case. I've given copies to the police, but I wanted you to have this too, so you understand exactly who she is. Michael accepted the file, its weight seeming to contain more than just paper. Thank you. Keep them close, Thompson advised as they parted with a solemn handshake. The psychological wounds take longer to heal than the physical ones. The drive home the following day felt surreal. The same roads, the same landmarks Michael had passed thousands of times, yet everything had changed. His perception of the past 6 months had been completely rewritten. Memories he had cherished, Rebecca playing with the twins, family dinners, quiet evenings by the fire, were now tainted, each moment recast as part of an elaborate performance designed to gain his trust while she systematically harmed his children. When he finally pulled into the circular driveway of the Lake Washington mansion, Michael sat for several minutes, staring at the house. He had designed it himself after Jessica's death, creating a sanctuary for his diminished family. Rebecca, Vanessa, had turned it into a prison, a place of fear and suffering for the two people he loved most. Inside, he found a transformation in progress. Martha directed a small army of workers rearranging furniture, replacing curtains, repainting the twins' bedroom. The heavy, dark aesthetic Rebecca had gradually introduced was being systematically erased, replaced with light colors, natural materials, and the comfortable, slightly chaotic atmosphere appropriate for a home with young children. Sarah took the girls to the garden, Martha informed him. They wanted to see the roses. Michael found them by the koi pond, Sarah kneeling between the twins as they tossed food pellets to the colorful fish. The scene was so peaceful, so normal, it made his throat tighten with emotion. Emily spotted him first. "Daddy, the fish remember us." He joined them by the pond, accepting Emily's enthusiastic hug while noting how Grace held back slightly, still more reserved than her sister. "Of course they remember you. Fish have excellent memories." "That's actually not true," Grace said quietly, her first attempt at correcting an adult since Rebecca had entered their lives. "Fish only remember things for about 5 seconds. Michael laughed, delighted by this small assertion of independence. "You're absolutely right. I stand corrected." Grace offered a tiny smile, encouraged by his positive response. "Did you meet Sophie's dad?" Sarah asked when the twins returned to feeding the fish. Michael nodded, keeping his voice low. "It was illuminating and heartbreaking. He's certain Rebecca, Vanessa, deliberately caused his daughter's death." "Will he testify?" "Yes, he's been searching for her for 3 years, gathering evidence. Between his testimony, ours, and the physical evidence, she'll never see freedom again." Michael glanced at the twins. "They've been asking about Dr. Elena. I told them you'd arrange it soon." "I called her this morning. She can see them tomorrow afternoon." Sarah watched the girls, a protective tenderness in her gaze. "They're doing remarkably well considering everything. Children have an incredible capacity for healing when they feel safe. They trust you completely. Children are remarkably intuitive about who's safe and who isn't. Once the sedatives wore off, their natural instincts returned." Michael hesitated, then asked the question that had been forming since the hospital. "Will you really stay, to help with their recovery?" Sarah looked up at him, her expression open. "For as long as they need me." The days flowed into weeks. Spring advanced across Seattle, cherry blossoms giving way to early summer flowers. In the Reynolds household, healing progressed in fits and starts. Dr. Elena Patel became a regular presence, using play therapy to help the twins process their trauma. Some days brought breakthroughs, Emily describing how Rebecca had threatened to send them away if they didn't take their special medicine, Grace drawing pictures of monsters with Rebecca's face. Other days saw setbacks, nightmares that left them screaming, regression to behaviors they had outgrown years earlier. Through it all, Sarah remained their constant, their safe harbor. She attended every therapy session, learned techniques to help them through panic attacks, created routines that provided security without rigidity. Michael watched in awe as she intuitively understood what his daughters needed, often before they themselves knew. His own healing came more slowly. Guilt continued to plague him, despite Dr. Patel's assurances that Rebecca's manipulation would have fooled anyone. At night, after the house grew quiet, he often found himself in his study, reviewing security footage from the months of Rebecca's presence, torturing himself with signs he should have noticed, opportunities he had missed to protect his children. One evening, Sarah found him there, surrounded by notebooks filled with self-recrimination. "This isn't helping them," she said softly, taking the notebook from his hands. "Or you." "I need to understand how I missed it," Michael insisted. "How I invited a predator into our home. You were lonely, overwhelmed, trying to be both parents to 2 young children while running a major company." Sarah sat across from him. "Rebecca targeted you precisely because you were vulnerable. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. My humanity nearly cost my daughters their lives. But it didn't. They survived. They're healing. Sarah's voice carried quiet authority. They need their father present in this moment, not lost in the past. The simple truth of her words penetrated his defenses. Michael looked at her, really looked at her, seeing the quiet strength, the unassuming wisdom that had saved his family. "How did you become so insightful?" he asked. Sarah smiled faintly. "Experience. I grew up in the foster system, learned to read people, situations, survival skill, really. I didn't know. It's not something I usually share." She stood, collecting the notebooks. "Get some sleep, Michael. Tomorrow's a big day. Emily's first riding lesson." He caught her hand as she turned to leave. "Thank you. Not just for tonight, but for everything. For seeing what I couldn't see. For fighting when I didn't know there was a battle." Their eyes met, a current of understanding passing between them. Sarah gently squeezed his hand before releasing it. "Good night, Michael." 3 months after Rebecca's arrest, the preliminary hearing was scheduled. The prosecutor, confident in the overwhelming evidence, expected the case to move quickly to trial. "You won't need to testify at this stage," she assured Michael during their preparation meeting. "We have more than enough to secure an indictment without putting you or the girls through that." "What about Sarah?" Michael asked, concerned about reopening wounds that had begun to heal. "Ms. Miller's testimony is crucial. She witnessed the drugging firsthand and can speak to the physical effects on the children. But we'll protect her as much as possible." The day of the hearing dawned clear and warm. Sarah dressed carefully in a simple blue suit that projected both professionalism and sincerity. At breakfast, the twins sensed the tension despite everyone's attempts at normalcy. "Are you going to see the bad lady today?" Emily asked, pushing her cereal around the bowl. Sarah knelt beside her. "Yes, but just to tell the judge what happened. Then I'll come straight home." "Will she see us too?" Grace's voice trembled slightly. "No, sweetheart. You and Emily are staying here with Daddy and Martha. You won't have to see Rebecca ever again." Grace nodded, relief evident in her small shoulders relaxing. "Can we make cookies while you're gone? Chocolate chip?" "That's a wonderful idea," Martha interjected, seizing the opportunity for distraction. "I think we have everything we need." Michael walked Sarah to her car. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be." She smoothed her jacket nervously. "The prosecutor says Rebecca's attorney might try to discredit me." "The evidence speaks for itself. No one who hears it could possibly doubt your account." Sarah nodded, but anxiety lingered in her expression. "What if it's not enough? What if somehow she—" Michael gently placed his hands on her shoulders. "Rebecca is never coming near our family again. I promise you that." "Our family." The phrase slipped out naturally, yet it hung in the air between them, acknowledging what had gradually evolved over the past months. Sarah, who had entered their lives as an employee, had become something far more significant. To the twins, who adored her, and to Michael, who had come to rely on her strength, her insight, her unwavering presence. "I should go," Sarah said, breaking the moment. "I don't want to be late." "Call me when it's over." "The minute I leave the courthouse," she promised. The courtroom was crowded when Sarah arrived. Media interest in the case remained high. The story of a beautiful socialite accused of systematically poisoning her stepchildren had all the elements of a sensational crime drama. Sarah took her seat in the front row beside Detective Sloan, trying to ignore the curious stares and whispered comments. The prosecutor nodded reassuringly from her table. Then Rebecca, Vanessa, was led in, wearing a conservative gray dress that couldn't quite disguise the orange jumpsuit beneath. Her hair, once perfectly styled, hung limp around her face. Yet she moved with the same grace, the same confidence, Sarah remembered, as if she were entering a charity gala rather than a felony hearing. Their eyes met briefly across the courtroom. Rebecca's expression remained neutral, but something cold and calculating flickered in her gaze, a silent promise that this wasn't over. Sarah forced herself to hold that gaze, refusing to show fear. Whatever power Rebecca once wielded through manipulation and deception had been stripped away. Here, in the harsh fluorescent light of the justice system, she was simply Vanessa Mitchell. Defendant, accused, soon to be convicted. The hearing proceeded efficiently. The prosecution presented their evidence. Toxicology reports, journal entries, Martha's video footage, Sarah's testimony about witnessing Rebecca drug the children. Alexander Thompson testified about his daughter's death. the similarities too precise to be coincidental. Rebecca's attorney, an expensive, silver-haired litigator from a prestigious firm, attempted to create reasonable doubt, suggesting alternative explanations for the children's symptoms, questioning the chain of custody for evidence, implying that Sarah had personal motives for discrediting his client. During cross-examination, he took a particularly aggressive approach with Sarah. "Ms. Miller, isn't it true that you developed feelings for Mr. Reynolds during your employment?" he asked, voice insinuating. "Objection. Irrelevant and prejudicial," the prosecutor interjected. "Your Honor, I'm establishing potential bias in the witness's testimony," the defense attorney argued. The judge considered briefly. "I'll allow it, but tread carefully, counselor." Sarah remained composed. "My only concern was for the welfare of two children being systematically poisoned." "Yet you now live in Mr. Reynolds' home, don't you? In quite a different capacity than originally hired?" "I remain as child care provider and nurse to Emily and Grace Reynolds, who are recovering from severe trauma and require consistent care." The attorney smiled thinly. "How convenient that your accusations resulted in such a beneficial living arrangement." Before Sarah could respond, the defense attorney consulted briefly with Rebecca, then addressed the court. "Your Honor, the defense wishes to introduce evidence questioning Ms. Miller's credibility. We've received information suggesting Ms. Miller has a history of making unsubstantiated allegations against employers." The prosecutor was on her feet instantly. "Objection! This is the first we're hearing of any such allegation. If the defense has evidence, it should have been disclosed during discovery." "It just came to our attention," the defense attorney claimed smoothly. "Former colleagues of Ms. Miller contacted my client's associates after seeing media coverage of this case." The judge's expression hardened. "We'll take a 15-minute recess. Counselors, in my chambers. Now." As court officials led Rebecca away, she turned slightly, offering Sarah a small, triumphant smile that sent a chill down her spine. In the hallway, Sarah called Michael with shaking hands. "She's trying to discredit me," she explained after recounting what had happened, "making it seem like I have a history of false accusations." "That's absurd," Michael said firmly. "Your record is impeccable. Dr. Harrison confirmed it himself before the hospital released the twins to your care." "I know, but—" Sarah stopped, sudden realization dawning. "Wait, how would she have contacted anyone from jail? She's not allowed unsupervised communications." "She wouldn't," Michael's voice sharpened. "This is another manipulation. I'm calling Detective Sloan right now." By the time court resumed, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The defense attorney looked distinctly uncomfortable as the judge addressed the courtroom. "It has come to the court's attention that the defense has made serious allegations against a witness without substantiation. An immediate investigation confirms that Ms. Miller left her position at Seattle Children's Hospital voluntarily, with exemplary recommendations. Furthermore, there appears to have been an attempt to fabricate evidence to obstruct these proceedings." Rebecca sat motionless, expression unreadable as her strategy collapsed. The judge continued, voice stern. "This court takes a very dim view of such tactics. Bail is hereby revoked. The defendant will remain in custody until trial." As Rebecca was led away, she turned once more towards Sarah, all pretense abandoned. Her face contorted with such naked hatred that several spectators gasped audibly. "This isn't over," she hissed, loud enough for the front row to hear. "They were mine. They'll always be mine." The outburst sealed her fate. By day's end, Rebecca had been formally indicted on multiple felony counts: 2 charges of attempted murder, child endangerment, fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Sarah drove home in silence, emotionally drained but relieved that Rebecca's final attempt at manipulation had backfired so completely. At the Reynolds mansion, she found an unexpected scene of domestic tranquility. Michael and the twins were in the kitchen, covered in flour, attempting to make the promised chocolate chip cookies. Martha supervised with bemused tolerance as Emily enthusiastically overstirred the batter, while Grace meticulously counted chocolate chips. "Sarah," Emily spotted her first, abandoning her mixing bowl to rush across the kitchen. "We're making cookies, but Daddy doesn't know how many eggs to use." "2," Grace supplied helpfully from her station. "It always says 2 on the package." Michael shrugged sheepishly, flour dusting his expensive dress shirt. "I may have forgotten to check the recipe." The normality of the scene, the innocent chaos of family baking, washed away the courtroom tension. Sarah dropped to one knee, accepting Emily's enthusiastic hug, flower and all. "It looks like you're doing a wonderful job," she assured them. "The most important ingredient in cookies is love, and I can see there's plenty of that." While the cookies baked, Sarah quietly recounted the hearing to Michael, including Rebecca's final outburst. "The prosecutor says it's essentially a slam dunk case now," she concluded. "Between the physical evidence, the testimony, and her behavior in court, no jury would acquit her." "Thank God," Michael said softly. "Maybe now we can truly begin to move forward." 2 weeks later, the news came that Rebecca had agreed to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. The prosecutor called personally to inform them. "Life without possibility of parole," she confirmed. "She'll never hurt another child again. And by taking this plea, she's sparing you and the children the trauma of a trial." "What about the other families?" Michael asked. "The Collins boy and Thompson's daughter?" "We're reopening those cases with the new evidence. Their families will finally have answers, if not complete justice." That evening, after the twins were asleep, Michael found Sarah on the back porch, gazing at the starlit surface of Lake Washington. He joined her at the railing, offering a glass of wine. "To closure," he said, raising his glass. "To new beginnings," she countered, clinking her glass against his. They stood in comfortable silence, the gentle lapping of water against the shore providing a soothing rhythm. "The girls are doing so well," Michael said eventually. "Elena says their progress is remarkable. They're resilient, all children are, given the right support." Sarah smiled. "Emily told me today she wants to be a doctor for feelings when she grows up." Michael laughed softly. "And Grace? A detective, or possibly a fish scientist. She's keeping her options open." Their laughter mingled in the night air, a sound that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. "Sarah," Michael began, his tone shifting to something more serious. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something." She turned to face him, moonlight silvering her profile. "What is it?" "Your position here. It was always meant to be temporary, helping the twins through their recovery, and they've come so far, largely thanks to you." A cold weight settled in Sarah's stomach. After all these months, was he asking her to leave? Had she misread the connection that had grown between them, between her and the girls? "I understand," she said carefully, keeping her voice neutral despite the sudden ache in her chest. "They're doing much better now. You probably want to return to a normal family routine." "That's not what I meant at all." Michael seemed frustrated by his own inability to express himself clearly. "What I'm trying to say, very badly, is that I don't want you here as an employee anymore." The ache intensified. "I see." "No, you don't." Michael took her hand, his expression earnest. "Sarah, you saved my daughters. You risked everything to protect them when I couldn't see the danger. In the process, you became essential to us, not as a nurse or caretaker, but as—" He faltered. "As what?" Sarah whispered. "As family," Michael finished simply. "The twins adore you, and I—" He looked away, then back, his gaze direct. "I've come to care for you deeply. More than I thought possible after Jessica." The admission hung between them, fragile and new. "I don't expect you to feel the same," Michael continued, "and I understand if this makes you uncomfortable. But I needed you to know before you make any decisions about your future." Sarah sat perfectly still, absorbing his words, aware of the moonlight on the lake, the distant sound of night birds, the journey that had brought her to this moment. "I care for you too," she finally said, "and the girls mean everything to me." "But," Michael prompted gently, sensing her hesitation, "but it all happened so fast, through crisis. I just want to be sure it's real, not just gratitude or shared trauma binding us together." Michael nodded. "I understand. We don't need to define anything now. I just wanted you to know that whatever happens next, it's your choice. Stay, go, take time to think. Just know that you'll always have a place here, not as staff, but as part of this family." The following Saturday, Michael suggested a picnic by the koi pond. While the twins fed the fish, now their favorite activity, he and Sarah spread a blanket beneath the old oak tree where Martha's security camera had captured the evidence that helped save the children. I have something to show you, Michael said, producing a small metal object from his pocket. Do you recognize this? Sarah took it, turning it over in her hands. The old basin? The one Rebecca used to? Yes, Martha found it buried in the garden where Rebecca left it. Michael took the basin back, running his finger along its edge. I've been thinking about what to do with it. Why keep it at all? Sarah asked, troubled by the reminder of darker days. Because it represents something important. How ordinary objects can become instruments of harm or healing, depending on whose hands they're in. He gestured toward the back of the garden. I've asked a sculptor to transform it into a small fountain, here by the pond. A reminder that even the darkest experiences can be reshaped into something beautiful. Sarah considered the idea, watching the twins laugh as koi surfaced to take food from their small fingers. I like that. Transformation rather than erasure. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, enjoying the crisp autumn air, the peaceful garden, the sound of children's laughter, all things that had seemed impossibly remote during Rebecca's reign. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves overhead, sending dappled sunlight dancing across the blanket. Emily and Grace chased each other around the pond, their squeals of delight punctuating the tranquil afternoon. Michael watched them with naked adoration, the shadows that had haunted his eyes for so long finally beginning to fade. Grace asked me yesterday if I was staying forever, Sarah said softly. Michael turned to her, expression carefully neutral. What did you tell her? That I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Sarah's gaze met his, open and honest. If that's still what you want. Michael's answer came not in words but in the gentle brush of his fingers against hers, a tentative touch that carried the weight of promise. Sarah turned her hand, interlacing their fingers, a simple gesture bridging the final distance between them. Daddy! Sarah, come see, Emily called from the pond's edge. The big orange fish is dancing. They rose together, walking toward the excited twins who pointed at a particularly energetic koi swirling near the surface. As they knelt beside the children, Grace unexpectedly slipped her small hand into Sarah's. Are you happy here with us? The little girl asked with characteristic directness. Sarah glanced at Michael, then back at Grace's solemn face. Very happy. Good, Grace nodded decisively, because we want you to stay forever. Right, Daddy? Michael smiled, the expression reaching his eyes in a way it rarely had before. Right, sweetheart. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garden, they remained by the pond, 2 adults and 2 children forming the outline of a new kind of family. One forged through crisis, cemented by care, illuminated by the healing power of love, freely given and gratefully received. In the water below them, the orange koi continued its dance, scales catching the light like tears of silver, transformed by the setting sun into something magical. Tears of the moon, washing away darkness, reflecting the promise of brighter days to come.